Hi there, everyone. Today we're going to be learning about the Roman achievements and something called the Pax Romana. So I'm going to do a little Augustus Caesar recap that we learned about on Monday with Mrs. Cook. And this is just going through exactly how Augustus came into power. So after Julius Caesar's death in 44 BC, many men vied for control of Rome. We know that there was lots of fighting. The winner ended up being Julius Caesar's great nephew and his adopted son, Octavian. We also know that Mark Antony was in there as well, but we did learn what happened to him, which is that he ran off with Cleopatra and then committed suicide. So finally, we have Octavian, who was now given the title of Augustus by the Senate, and he became the sole leader of Rome. Augustus is the first Roman emperor. So I want to focus you in here that now Rome is no longer a republic, it's what's called an empire. And Augustus governed Rome for more than 40 years, from 27 BC to about 14 AD. And he used his power to stabilize the government of Rome. He added new provinces to the empire, so new areas, and he helped to rebuild the city after a lot of years of civil war. He even did something a little unique, which he created a fire department and a police force. So we're going to go into uh, the time period that he began, which is called Pax Romana. What does it mean? And you might see some symbols here and you might know what they mean, and that's going to help us figure it out. So before Augustus, there had been lots of fighting around the area, and he was the one, Augustus, also known as Octavian, same person, ended this fighting. He took control of the whole area. And Pax Romana literally means Roman peace. So we have the peace sign with our fingers. A lot of us like to take selfies and use that little peace sign. And this is another peace symbol. And the peace lasted about 200 years. Now, I want to be clear about something. Augustus did not live to be 200 years old. So he started this time period, and a lot of things that we're going to learn about today occurred over the time period, but he didn't do everything. He did not last that long. So let's take a look at a map. You guys know I love maps. And so we see here, let's orient ourselves a little bit. We found Rome right here in the center of now present day Italy and Sicily, kicking that boot. And this was everything that was in this pinkish color was Rome during the time of the Republic. Okay. And then we start to see a little bit of a change. We learned last week from Mrs. Cook that Julius Caesar had taken over this big area called Gaul, now called France, and he took over some parts of northern Africa. And now we're going to see with Augustus that he's taking over this area of teal. So all along this like European and Eastern European area, and this little tip on the north coast of what Spain is. So we're not going to worry about the green area just yet, but now this area of Rome has grown into a magnificent empire. And clearly, with an empire, they got to do some building. So they concentrated a lot of their efforts on building roads and something called aqueducts, which we'll learn in the next couple of slides. And they started building up the buildings back in the forum. And so, in order to increase all of this trade, they had this huge empire now. Everyone in the empire began to use a common currency. Okay, another word for that is their money. It obviously made it very much easier to trade. It meant that a merchant in Greece could sell to a person in Italy or Egypt. They also use a system of weights and measures to set prices, trade, and ship goods. Now, I'd be really impressed if you remembered, who else did we learn about who standardized the currency and the weights and the measurements? And they also did a lot of crazy things and also died under mysterious circumstances. Can you remember? He was from China. Do you got it? Yes, it was Emperor Shi Huangdi. So we see again, history repeats itself, and we see that now Rome has decided, hey, that's a great idea, standardizing the currency, making everybody have the same money, so now we can trade. Okay. So in order to trade, you need really good roads. And we see here, you might say, hey, a road's not that difficult to build, but I really beg to differ. Okay, so right now here we see all of the different materials that were used, and it says Roman roads were built to last. They were constructed of sand, concrete, rock, stone, and then they had little ditches on the sides to let off water so that the water wouldn't pool up and prevent some damage. You guys know what happens when we have water damage. Yes, you do. We have a pothole, and those stink. So they were really smart in their ways that they created these roads. And you might say, well, okay, big deal, they made roads. Well, who are they making it for? And we look over here to our right, and we have this gentleman here who is part of the military. So the military created the roads, they built them, and they were also built for the military. And that means that they were built so that Rome's armies could travel quickly throughout the empire. Rome had an impressive set of roads. Are you ready for what they look like? Whoa, here we go. Here are all of Rome's roads that were built during the Roman Empire. Were they all built under Augustus? No. Did they all start to being built under the Roman Empire? Absolutely. And now we see all these areas of red throughout here. Very impressive. And we have this little fun fact that the Romans built about 50,000 miles of roads. That's enough to circle the earth twice. Incredible. And we see up here that Roman roads stretched all the way up to Scotland. And if you guys know what this island is, that's Great Britain. And down here we have even the northern coast of Africa. And there's a saying that says, all roads lead to Rome. Isn't that certainly true? Because any road that you went on would eventually always have a connecting road that would lead it right back to Rome. And that's actually a saying now that it really doesn't mean exactly that. It really means that there's many different ways to solve a problem, which there are. So in addition to the Roman roads, we also saw that the Romans did something else with engineering, which is they really perfected the use of the arch. And the arch is right here, the shape that I'm making. And you can see that in the image. And this shows a picture of a Roman aqueduct. And what an aqueduct is just basically a way to bring water from a water source into the city. You might say, wow, this looks like really complicated. Honestly, I've looked it up many times. It is complicated, and they built it. This is what was built at the beginning of the Roman Empire many, many years ago. And it was a very complex system that allowed fresh water to be brought into the city. You could kind of see it in this image that the aqueduct has to be built on a system of gravity. So if you take a look here, it's kind of going slightly downward. And that's because the water source had to be up high, and then gravity would take the water across, eventually, and lead it into a city. Why is this so important? One, everybody likes fresh water, and the Romans got really used to having it. And not everywhere in Rome, as they started to expand, was next to a river. Of course, the city of Rome was next to the Tiber River, but not everywhere was. So we needed to get fresh water to these places. Two, Romans decided to start the world's first sewer system, which is very, very important. If you're not sure what that is, you can walk into your bathroom, flush the toilet. That is a part of your sewer system. So that is something that was developed on a very much more basic scale that has developed into what we know today. So it takes out some of the bad water and then brings in nice, good water for you to use. Very, very important, and helped a little bit with making everything a little bit more sanitary. So this is called an aqueduct. And I just want to point out a lot of them had 3 layers. And you're not going to just see these in Italy. You're going to see these throughout Spain and France and other places because that's where Rome took over. All right, so here we get to some entertainment. Part of this is absolutely review. And we know that the Romans built huge amphitheaters like the Colosseum. And we see that up right here. This is a modern day picture of it. It's not like they forgot to finish it off. This is just what it looks like today and a beautiful night vision view of it. But of course, it was full and complete when they did build it. And in there, we know the gladiators would fight each other to the death, and sometimes they would fight the animals. And we learned that a while back when we were talking about Spartacus. And something that was really interesting was the Colosseum would sometimes be flooded, and they would do this as another form of entertainment. So they would fill this up with water, and they would have people be in these top areas, and they would put on these mock naval battles or fake naval battles that would be played out on the floor with the water all filled up in it. It was pretty impressive in order to be able to do that. And then they would drain it out again to have gladiator fights. And over here we see on the right, this is a chariot race that Romans also enjoyed watching in another structure called the Circus Maximus. And we see here even those arches that we just talked about. Those were used in a lot of the Roman architecture in a lot of the buildings. So here we have Roman language, which was Latin. No, they didn't speak Roman. They spoke something called Latin. And it influenced all these different languages: Italian, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and Romanian. And a lot of our English words have Latin roots. Do we hear Latin spoken today? Not really. It is not a language that we use, but it was a language that many of these languages stemmed from. We still use the English alphabet. The alphabet only had 22 letters. We know our alphabet has 26. So they didn't have a couple of letters. They didn't have a W or a Y. And J was really written as an I. So they had some different things, but there are many professions that use Latin phrases in their work: doctors, lawyers, scientists, especially scientists, because all plants and animals, have Latin names. Okay, even like Homo sapiens, that's human race. That comes from Latin. That is a Latin name. I bet you could think of some others. Oh, and here we go, Roman numerals. So not only did they have language, but now the numerals have to do with math. And you've definitely seen these before. Some of you might have even seen it every single year in a favorite sport of yours, perhaps. We play this sport in the fall. There's a special day on Sunday in February where the championship is. That's right, the Super Bowl. Super Bowl always uses Roman numerals. And this year we had Super Bowl 54. Can you figure out what letters you would use? Yeah, you would use the L for 50, and you would use IV for 4. So you might have seen Super Bowl 54 written as Super Bowl LIV. Okay, and we probably know these ones best: 1, 2, and 3. And then after that, it gets a little shaky. Finally, tomorrow and the next couple of days, we're going to be learning about world major religion, Christianity, that began during this time period. And it obviously helped spread with the Roman road system throughout the entire empire and beyond. And then later on in the 300s,